Welcome to Off the Rails, the podcast where steam locomotives meet modern madness. Join Executive Director of the Mount Rainier Scenic Railroad, Bethan Maher, and Rowdy Pierce, Superintendent, professional cat herder, and occasional cow negotiator. Together, they pull back the curtain on the wild, weird, and often hilarious world of tourist steam railroads. You'll get a front row seat to the ins and outs of this truly unique business. So grab your ticket, hold on to your sense of humor, and join us for a ride into the unpredictable world of steam. This is Off the Rails.
Welcome to Off the Rails with Bethan and
Rowdy.
I'm the Executive Director of Western Forest Industries Museum, the nonprofit that operates Mount Rainier Scenic Railroad. Sort of. We'll talk about that.
And I am Rowdy, the guy behind basically making everything else work.
Everything that goes back and forth.
Everything goes back and forth. Superintendent, CMO, engineer, conductor, fireman, extraordinaire.
Wood, steel, Rowdy.
Yeah.
Anyway, so
the man,
this is
the legend, the myth.
This is our new podcast. Why do we have a podcast, Rowdy? What are we talking about?
Well, so I think they came up, what was it, 2 weeks ago? About a week, 2 weeks ago, we were on the phone with each other and we were trying to talk about, we were talking over getting information out into the industry. And one of the things that came up was that, that was the reason behind the YouTube. It was trying to be transparent. We're trying to be transparent in the Facebook. And both of us just kind of landed on, I think we need to do a podcast because there's a lot of things that we want to try to communicate to the world at large. But trying to do that in conventions and a one-on-one is a lot harder to do than going after it in a mass scale, which a podcast can do.
When you say the industry, we are specifically talking about the tourist railroad, heritage railroad world. This niche little industry that operates steam trains, historic equipment, sort of amusement park attractions, if you will, on operable railroads. But also, we are starting to dip our toes into the short line railroad world and other things of the sort. So we are working in this weird little business niche that exists in the world. It's a small world. We're only ever, one point of contact away from anyone else in it. But it's sort of it's an interesting one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. I had a thought, but then I lost it, so.
I'll just keep talking. Great. It's an interesting world because it operates in the world of all the big railroads, right? The class ones, that's BNSF, CSX, UP, depending on who merges and when. Short lines are sort of the last mile, if you will. They're the railroads that get from industry to the rest of the rail network, and then tourist railroads exist in the gray space between.
Well, tourist railroads they're kind of a strange enigma in themselves because they are, depending upon how you look at it, they are a railroad. They are a class 3 short line railroad, but then on the other side of it, they are no different than Disneyland. If you really want to get into the brass tacks of it, because the railroad is just the minute, small little thing in this bigger thing that carries people.
We don't haul commodities, right? We create experiences. We haul people and we create positive, happy, in theory, experiences for them. And that is our market. That is our niche. And that changes the way we do business and that we look at business because in some ways, the logistical considerations for us hauling 80,000 people a year are more significant than the logistical considerations of hauling 80,000 pieces of dimensional lumber. Whatever, talking.
And dimensional lumber doesn't sue you over their coffee being too hot.
So, tourist railroads, I think, operate in this gray space in terms of regulation, compliance, funding scenarios. We're interested in talking about all of that. We're interested in legitimizing the industry. Yeah,
because somebody's going to probably take this the wrong way, but the tourist railroad industry right now is really, in my opinion, not too terribly well legitimized. And that comes from 25 years of being in the tourist railroad industry and watching it over the course of that 25 years. I will sit back and say that when I got into it as a kid versus now being an adult and a high-level manager of an organization, it hasn't changed.
It really hasn't
adopted new techniques. It hasn't. It has not changed in any way, shape, or form. So it's one of them things that it's never really legitimized itself except for some big players in the game. And for example, this week, working with the FRA and some stuff, the FRA just flat says, well, you're a tourist railroad and we already got a bone to pick with you simply because you're a tourist railroad.
It's the Federal Railroad Administration.
Yeah.
That's the federal oversight for anything related to railroads. I've been in this industry for 16 years. I'll argue with you a little bit. I think that when I got in, I was 21. You've been doing this since you were a kid. When I got in, it was more about running trains. I will say I think that now there's a focus on experiences and events, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the business behind tourist railroads have changed. And what I mean by the business behind it is your internal controls, your best practices, how you're maintaining your track, how you're maintaining your equipment, how you're networking with the rest of the world, to figure out what the best way to do something is. I think I was talking to someone last week who's, I call him a big kid, someone that owns a few transloads and short line railroads and that sort of thing, and was sort of talking about some of the issues within the industry. And I said, there's a negative reputation that tourist railroads have, and I would say that it's deserved. We need to do something to combat that. And he sort of said, no, it's earned. It's an earned reputation.
It is an earned reputation. Last week, too, we heard from some folks that were talking about the things they were doing while they were working on their steam locomotive, and I talked to you about that, and we both went, and that right there is the reason why tourist railroads have a bad name. So I won't go calling it out, but it was definitely one of those things where if you knew about it, you would sit back and say, whoa, that is the level that some of these places are operating at.
So going back, purpose of the podcast, legitimizing the industry. What challenges does this industry face, right? How do we do better? How do we legitimize ourselves so that we're not just a liability, right?
Yeah.
So that we're something that's providing serious and real value to the communities through which we operate, because we do. So that we're something that is doing some historic preservation, so we're preserving infrastructure, that we're playing a role in both the rail network at large, but in connecting the communities that we serve. Well, how do we legitimize operations so that they're serving all of those purposes, but also on a national level, there's some sort of symbiotic and cohesive relationships between organizations that aren't based on ego, that aren't based on...
That's way too many big words for me.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
You want me? Okay. Yeah. Do you want me to start making George Patton quotes and then you'll feel more comfortable?
No, we don't need that. But to kind of go on to that too. I mean, when we went to when I was asked yesterday, well, why behind the podcast, and I told that individual, and well, it kind of seems like when we go to these conventions, we start talking, people start listening, and not just listening as those guys are smart. It's just For example,
it's probably because you're quoting George Patton.
No, when we were in Denver for the ASLRA conference, and who were we talking to? I can't remember what railroad, but we were talking about difficulties and all that, and they were talking about demurrage, and they were talking about the getting cars in and out.
You were talking about
federal funding and all that, and they said,
Santa's bowel movements.
what kind of problems do you guys deal with? And we're Santa crapped his pants in front of the customers, and then he we had to fire Santa because he ended up whipping it out and going to the bathroom in front of a 12-year-old elf, and it was just not good. And the look of horror but amazement that came over those folks' face, because you could tell they had never thought about that Santa having bowel problems could be a problem on the railroad.
Diarrhea is never good.
Diarrhea is never good.
But definitely worse when you've got customers you're trying to serve.
Yeah.
and make a magical experience.
Yeah, when Santa sat down, he was actually crapping his pants.
Anyway, so we're talking about legitimizing the industry and the sustainability of the industry, I think, is the other one that we both really, really care about. Is a lot of times we don't have a great ability to focus just on ourselves. A lot of times we talk about how do we do this in a way that we're helping the rest of the industry, that we're making this sustainable, that we're not a liability, that the FRA sees is just, okay, we need to come in here and shut this operation down, something that's going to have sort of the snowball effect for the rest of these tourist railroad operations. Mm-hmm. How do we make it so that it's sustainable? You know, we talk about our marketing a lot. Mm-hmm. Our marketing at first, in the last 2 years, made a lot of folks clutch their pearls because we were really transparent. We were also really, really irreverent because you and I don't have an ability to be overly serious most of the time. So it was sort of what I tell people is the group chat just sort of made the social media.
Yeah.
But accidentally, what happened there is we found a lot of other people were interested in what we were doing. Mm-hmm. We've reached a lot better audience that's had this ricochet effect on sales, on how people view us within the rest of the industry, how the FRA views us, because we're being transparent about the work we're doing. So I think by no means are we saying we have all of the answers, but we are in this situation where we're messing around and finding out. See that, Calvin? And you're not going to have to edit that in post-production. What?
Fuck.
Anyway. So I think that's sort of we don't have all the answers, right? But we're in a position where we're slowly finding more out, that we care about the sustainability, not just of our railroad, which for us means diversifying income streams, getting into freight, getting into car storage. That's all stuff we're going to talk about.
Yeah. Well, but it also, you know, it comes down to
I think it was Paul Delius over at Rainier Rail that when we were first getting this fired up, he told us, he said, hey, tourist railroads are a weird thing because it seems like all it is just a race to the bottom and your goal is to be the last one to go splat. Yeah. And I would agree 100% with that, because when I started doing this, there were a lot more railroads around that. I mean, there were a lot more railroads here in this state, for a matter of fact. And now, 25 years later, it's really starting to look like Mount Rainier Scenic Railroad might be the last tourist organization in the state of Washington in the next 15 years. There's a potential for it. We hope there's not, but there's a potential for it. And if you look at it across the country, we've seen in the last, COVID wiped out a few. But then lack of foresight to a certain extent took another few out.
Yeah, that strategic planning is really, really important. These operations, I mean, when I got involved, I started at Adirondack Scenic in upstate New York. It had a few paid employees, but it was almost an entirely volunteer operation. When most of these places got started really in the 80s and 90s, when you got started, when you were still in diapers, when you were 8, it was a volunteer-based operation with a few paid staff holding it together. Mm-hmm. As those folks have, quite frankly, passed away or aged out, we have an incredibly young staff and volunteer base, but it's a lot harder. I think the economy has changed. I think our culture has changed in terms of, community service, volunteer time.
And interest has changed.
Interest has changed. I didn't get into this because I was interested in trains. You did.
I was assimilated.
Nerdy, and I liked history, and I needed a job. So I took a job making $12 an hour pushing papers in an office and accidentally opened my mouth one too many times. Mm-hmm. Right place, right time to some degree. But I wouldn't have gotten into this as a volunteer.
No.
And I think that's what we're finding, right? There's a lot of folks that have interest, but maybe their interest isn't trains. Maybe it's photography.
Yeah.
Maybe it's events. Maybe it's I'm really into whiskey tasting and hey, I see that you do a whiskey event. How do we bring more people in, right? I'm a mom. I got 3 young kids.
And then to kind of, I think that in this, I'm going to be doing a really good job of, making people mad by pointing things out, because that's just kind of what I do. when you sit back and look at a lot of these folks that we've had come up here that want to volunteer too, a lot of them don't want to go through what it takes to really learn the trade. They just want to get to the end final boss level like that quick right off the bat. And that's kind of the problem in the industry as well, is that the folks that want to come in and do it don't want to be patient and learn how to really do it. They want to just sit in the cab and blow the whistle.
That's a good point. Skilled trades are dying.
Trades are dying.
I think for a long time, especially in our generation, everyone was told you need to go to college.
Yep.
Right?
I was flat told by my first girlfriend's grandmother that if I didn't go to college and have at least a 2-year degree, that then the family was not going to allow
Both
me
my
to marry.
parents were teachers, my grandparents were teachers, right? Like I went to college. I graduated and I was making close to minimum wage because 2009, 2010 was the height of the recession, and a college degree didn't mean shit. But in that giant push, we've lost trades programs in schools.
Yep.
Right, apprenticeships aren't really a thing anymore. So a lot of the skills, the manual, we have folks all the time that say, well, I'm a machinist. They do CNC machining, which isn't what we need to maintain a steam engine. We need manual machine work. You need carpenters. You need folks that are equipment operators. And I think that for a while, and I think that the culture is shifting back, but all of that was devalued.
It was.
Massively, which has done a huge disservice to our country, I think, to folks' confidence levels, right? My gosh, I know that there are kids starting out in the railroad industry now making more than folks with master's degrees. That's not to say that I don't value the education I received, but there's more than one way to skin the cat.
I mean, and that goes back to the highest paying job I've ever had in my life was being a dump truck driver. I made in 2018, I was making $140,000 a year, 8 months out of the year.
Yeah. But I think, when we talk about the challenges this industry faces, those are all real challenges. Is those skills have died. There's a lot of kids getting into it now, but there is this massive age gap sort of in the railroad world, where you got a lot of folks in their 70s and 80s, maybe a handful of few in their 50s or 60s, but then there's a lot of folks our age that I think got into it, and younger. There's a lot of really, really, really good folks that are younger in this industry, and that's important because the organizations that don't have new blood, and I know that it's a buzzword, but some diversity in their staffing that reflects who is going to buy a ticket on that train.
Yeah. Well, and then it also comes down to lead into to kind of add on to that. It also comes down to at the organizational level too. You have these guys that have been around the organization for, since dirt was young or whatever. They're extremely protective of it, and they don't want to change, and they don't want the younger generation to come in with ideas.
That's how I started out. No one wanted me there.
There is a book out there. It's called Farming Without the Bank. And one of the things that the author says in the book is
that the older generation needs to let the younger generation come in and try out ideas, because the world changes, people change, demographics change. If you can't change with the world as you're moving forward, then you're going to end up being irrelevant because you haven't changed to keep up. So these organizations that got these younger folks that want to come in, that really sit back and say, hey, let's try this, let's try that. And the older folks say, no, we're not doing that because this is the way we've always done it. That's actually kind of holding the whole organization back.
You're right. And finding what skills folks are good at, and using those skills. And I'm going to, Nate Shedd was a volunteer we had around for a while. He's a damn good photographer, high school student. I could spend $500 boosting a super well curated post on Facebook, or I could pay Nate Shedd $500 to go take photos for a day.
Yep.
Those photos would go viral because he had just a skill set and a hell of an eye.
He had a really good eye.
Right. He was willing to come down and volunteer time, and he did a lot of that.
He did a lot of that.
That was a heck of a lot better for our business, was having someone that was 16, 17, putting them through RWP program, figuring out how to get them safe access to different points on the railroad, and then leveraging those skill sets, right? It doesn't need to be that everyone is interested in doing machine work. Everyone's interested in being in the cab of the locomotive, although most people are.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different things that make these organizations tick.
Well, that's it's a gear, right? The whole organization is one gear, but there's multiple drive gears that make it work.
I mean, we got an intern this summer, Hamish, who's really into trains, but not their operation. He's interested in how railroad networks connect and the economic impact of that. And he's created these economic impact models that I can take any tourist railroad's data in the country, plug that into some other stuff we're doing. That'll be another episode. And I can calculate the economic impact through visitors, through ticket sales, through revenue, right? And that's something he was interested in, that I said, hey, do you want to take this project on?
Well, it's fueling passion too. I mean, people are gonna go after their passions if you fuel their passions. I mean, to get on the operational side of things, look at Nate.
Yeah.
Kid liked trains. He came up. He did whatever he was
16.
asked. He was 16, and we contacted the FRA and said, "Hey, this kid is like the best person we have for being on crew. He's picked it all up." And the FRA said, "Well, there's no regulation that says he has to be 18. That's a company policy. Throw a test at him. If he passes the test with proficiency, then throw it out. Give it to him. Give it to him. Let him do it." So, we did that. We said, "Hey, kid, let's put you through the test." He passed with a 98%. He only missed like 2 of the 150 questions.
One was a poorly written question.
And one was a very poorly written question that is actually a requirement that you miss that question to pass the test.
We're going to rewrite the test.
Yeah. So
we can do better.
Now look at him. He's fresh out of high school. He had a full-time job right out of high school, doing what he likes, and he's turning out to be a damn good employee. And when he finally gets to the age that we can throw him through the 240 program, he's going to have 4 or 5 years under his belt being on a locomotive and around the railroad to be able to operate the locomotive safely.
And hopefully our business will be to a point that we're offering railroad retirement, that he's vested in the system, and that this is a viable career, right? With essentially a pension, right? That's a dying thing in 2025. There's value in these skills. There's value in these jobs, right? Those are all of the pieces that make this industry sustainable. That tourist railroads, we need to get hip to it. I don't want to, what's Gen Z saying?
Well, I mean, dead ass, I guess. I don't know.
Tourist railroads have no riz.
I'm a boomer.
Rowdy identifies as a boomer. That's going to be a reoccurring theme in this podcast.
Millennial boom. Yeah, I'm a millennial boom.
Okay, so let's do a recap here. Why are we doing this podcast? We're going to talk about the business behind what we do. We are going to talk about how we are building business within our own organization, how we're diversifying income streams, how we've got to do more than rely on just tourism. We are talking about legitimizing the industry and the sustainability of the industry. And that's not meant to call anyone out, but these opinions expressed in the podcast are the personal opinions of Rowdy, no middle name Pierce, and Bethan Maher.
Yeah, and if we accidentally call you out, I mean, if you're Cinderella and the shoe fits, wear it. I mean, at the end, if I say something that goes along the lines with something that you see or you feel is going on at your organization, or if you are in charge of an organization, you sit back and go, "Wow, we do that." Own it. Sit back and say, "Hey."
Our organization is not perfect.
Our organization is far from perfect. But that seems to be what's made the organization work. Is that, I mean, if you look at the work ethic of the guys that are here, I mean, it's Tuesday. They're supposed to be off, but they're here working on the 70 to make sure it's ready for the week.
Well, this is after they took their one day off to go down the Oregon
and they went to Oregon
Railroad
Scenic
and
Nate went for a
all
cab
over
ride,
the locomotive and, But anyway.
But so if you look at some of the situations that we've talked about, the personal post I made about Chris about, hey, back in April, I said he was never going to be in the cab of a locomotive, and now here he is. He's firing the engine almost every other weekend. And he's doing a damn good job of doing it,
But talking about what we need to do to be better.
What we need to do, for us here, what we need to do to be better is
I mean, that's probably going to be the subject of a lot of podcasts.
That's make a lot of different episodes of what we could and could not do better. I mean, for example, the 5 is a perfect example of where we could be better because, the 5 fell behind in its schedule because we bit off way more than we could chew in 2 or 3 different situations. And, we put some trust and faith in people. It wound up not working out right. Or, in the case of one of the big problems was you wrote a grant saying, I'm never going to get that. And then we got the grant and it was like, holy crap. Now we are committed.
Now we have to do it.
Now we have to open up another 5.5 miles of railroad while we were already committed to rebuilding the 5, while we were already committed to getting the parlor car finished and in service after 10 years.
We spread ourselves too thin.
We spread ourselves way too thin. And we do that a lot here. The 5 situation is a victim of that because the 5 was always put to the back burner. So, I mean, there's lots of any organization can do better. I mean,
legitimizing sustainability, what we're doing well, what we're not doing well. I'm sure that's going to be a frequent topic. Any opportunity we can to get other people interested in this weird little niche industry where we run a choo-choo train back and forth all day, every day. I think that has a lot of value. Why does it matter, right?
Yep.
Is seeing a lot of times we talk about this and folks who don't know they're interested are. Hopefully we'll find a few new people, and then I assume we'll probably gossip a little bit.
I'm sure we will. And the other thing is too is that there's a lot of people that we might shatter their dream because we'll sit back and say, hey, this is what you think it is coming through the door. This is what it really is. So be prepared for it. I mean, how many people have we had come through the door that have been like, well, this is my dream and this is what I want to do. And we sit back and say, okay, well, that's perfectly fine. And then we throw them into the world and they realize, holy crap, this is not at all what I thought.
Adam Cordell.
Eric, too.
Eric,
coming from a world of planes, loving trains, wanting to get in on it, and then sitting back and saying, holy crap, it's a lifestyle. This is a lifestyle. This is not what I thought it was going to be. And then, the other Eric having to come in and say, hey, man, everybody thinks that tourist railroads are this, when in reality, they are this, because you're not just worrying about making the train go forward and backward. You're worrying about T-shirts. You're worrying about customer experience. You're worrying about
how do I stock enough pullback
different
toy
things to be able to make sure that the gear as a whole continues to turn. Because if it was just the train going forward and backward, nobody would pay for it.
Well, and we'll bring all of those folks into the fold, right?
Oh, yeah.
This is an opportunity to talk to Adam Cordell, who I'm picking on, who says, no, I want the real railroad, the real logging railroad experience. And he gets here and he's like, just someone get me out of the cab of this damn steam engine. Right? Eric. Everyone in the industry knows Eric Mensis because he is A, a really nice guy. Yep. B, he's damn good at his job. C, he made a cat famous, which apparently that's a thing.
Yep.
But he's not super foamy about the operation of this stuff.
He likes where he's at.
You start talking to him about the ROI of his retail merchandise and how he can offer a first-class service on board, and his eyes light up and he gets his Cheshire Cat grin and he's like, just pure capitalism. And it's really, really fun to watch people get passionate about what they're good at.
Yep.
And that's an opportunity for us to talk to our staff and sort of the community. Maybe folks from other railroads. We don't know. We'll see where it goes.
It's going to be different.
We're going to mess around and find out.
And people are either going to like it or they're going to hate it.
We'll either like it or we'll hate it.
I think we already hate it. But
up next, on next week's episode, we are going to be talking about the economic impact, economy, how all of that stuff affects tourist railroads. This is what I get really nerdy about.
Yeah, and I gotta listen to it
over and over again. How many? And really, let's be honest. How many hours a day, on average, do we spend on the phone with each other?
Let's.
I pick up my phone and it asks if I want to call Rowdy.
I think the other day we spent. I actually noted it. I think the other day it was 3 hours. Yeah, Sunday was 3 hours.
No, it was Friday too.
Yeah, but the record for the week was Sunday at 3 hours because I hurt my arm. And I was talking on the phone.
Oh,
like
it's
this.
not tennis elbow, it's cell phone elbow. You
Yeah, I
gotta
was
get
talking
some
on the phone
AirPods.
like this, and Randy came up and said, "That's why your arm hurts so bad. You need to be off the phone."
So Randy, your better half, blamed me. That's fair.
Yeah,
But I think for us at the end of it is we're just putting microphones in front of our phone conversations, and we're
pretty
giving
much.
ourselves a way to legitimize talking to each other as much as we do.
Yeah, pretty much. I think so. So, all right.
Cool.
Calvin just told us that's 30 minutes. We'll see
Okay.
you guys later.
Bye. See you next time on Off the Rails.
And that wraps up this episode of Off the Rails. A huge thank you to our totally real, definitely not made up production crew. Sound design by Microphone. Catering by Cornelius Cobb. Track maintenance provided by Rusty Switches. And marketing brilliance courtesy of Souvenir. I'm your host, reminding you to keep your hands inside the train at all times, because around here, things always go off the rails.